to Building Real-Time AI Voice Agents. I'm super excited to be here. So my name is Annie, and I am a developer evangelist at Twilio. I'm an AI nerd, productivity hacker, and major foodie, in case you can't tell with the huge croissant on the screen. That image is not AI generated, by the way. This croissant does actually exist in London. If you want to find out where to get a croissant that big, come talk to me after the presentation. And with all that talk about food, you're probably wondering what's on the agenda today. But instead of just showing you the agenda on the slideshow, I'm actually going to ask my voice AI agent. So I'm going to try and do this with one hand. I'm going to switch my screen to my script. Hopefully this works. Hear that. And then I'm going to connect my phone so I can mirror it. So I'm going to make a phone call to the phone number, which is here. 5.
Today's demo on building AI voice agents with Twilio. I'm Mira, your demo assistant. How can I help you today?
Hey, what's on the agenda today? Actually, can you send that to me as a text instead? So I've just interrupted my agent over here. And then in a moment, hopefully we'll make a function call.
The agenda to your phone.
Cool, so I'm going to end the call there. I'm going to switch to my messages. And hopefully the SMS comes through, but the network here is pretty bad, so I don't know if the phone's going to get it. I have 1 bar on my phone. Oh, there we go. Yay! So, I don't know why it's not showing on my screen. Let's try that one more time. So I have to use QuickTime to project my phone. I'm trying to hold the microphone and my phone at the same time. So, okay, that took a while. But basically, for today's agenda, I've got a full course meal for you. There's a food theme going on, so please indulge me for the next 25 minutes on this. For our appetizer, we're going to talk about why people are building voice AI agents. For our main course, we're going to talk about how to build a conversation relay, which is a Twilio product. For our side dish, we're going to talk about the resources, how to get started, what's coming up next. And for our dessert, we're going to do a fun activity, hopefully if there's enough time, to say your feedback. So, we're going to jump back into our presentation now. So, quick question here. Who here prefers speaking over texting? Anybody using ChatGPT in voice mode maybe? Well, I personally really enjoy using voice mode over typing a lot of text because I can get more context in a short amount of time. So, let's talk about voice as a user interface. When humans were born, the first thing we learned to do was actually to speak before we could write, because the way we can process information is much quicker through speaking and listening over reading and writing. So these numbers are just rough. They come from a blog post by Julian. There's a link in the bottom right. I know it's kind of small, but if you want, I can share the slides with you if you're interested. And what this also means is that data exchange is much quicker, and if we're using a voice interface, it just comes more naturally to us. The data is more enriched in that context, and it's just more fun. So let's talk about building your own voice interface. When it comes to building your own voice interface, one of the ways in which you can build it could look like this. So you're stitching together several components. The first one being your speech-to-text, text-to-speech models. You've got to think about your business and application logic. There's also the how that is going to interact with your large language models. And then when your voice agent is talking, if you're interrupting it or if you're detecting for end-of-turn detection, those are things that you want to take into consideration. And then, of course, orchestrating all these different pieces together. I know there are also speech-to-speech models, but there are pros and cons depending on the use case and how you want to use it. So quickly, you'll realize that there's a lot of problems that come from having to stitch all these different components together. The first one being latency. So when you're working with all these different models, the response time, if you're adding function calling, that's going to make the response time slower and slower. And when you're in a voice interface, you want that conversation to flow naturally. You want that to be more in real time and have that good experience. Then there's also the issue with timing. So earlier in the demo that I just did, I was able to interrupt the agent. And that is quite important in that conversation flow, because you don't want to just be talking over the agent and then you kind of like lose your train of thought as you're conversing with that agent. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, orchestrating all of this together is quite challenging, and having to maintain it yourself is quite challenging, as I mentioned. So at Twilio, we came up with Conversation Relay. And Conversation Relay helps you focus on mostly your business or application logic. So putting more value into that and taking that infrastructure of the orchestrating between the speech-to-text and text-to-speech off of you. So you bring your own AI, you bring your own large language model, and then we handle the real-time text-to-speech, speech-to-text orchestration. We also handle interruption handling, as you saw in the demo, out of the box, and that just makes things much easier for you, so you don't have to worry so much about, how are you going to build that voice layer. And then we also partner with these lovely text-to-speech and speech-to-text providers. We partner with Google, Amazon, Elizabeth Labs, and DeepGram to get you that good latency. There are over 50 different languages and over 5,000 different voices you can play around with. So when it comes to customizing the voice of your agent, which is really important if you want to build something that's like more human-like, more natural, those are really great to play around with. So let's talk a little bit about the architecture of this. So it all starts with a phone number. So on the left-hand side, a phone number will come in, and then we have a WebSocket connection that streams the, so Conversation Relay will turn that phone call from speech into text, and that text gets streamed over WebSocket into your application. And then however you want to handle that text, however you want to process it in your own application, you can decide. So you can connect it to your large language model, you can hook it up to a knowledge base, you can do some function calling, tool calling if you want. And then what you'll do is you'll stream that text token back into Conversation Relay, and that automatically gets turned back into speech. So the whole idea of this is relaying text back and forth, hence the name Conversation Relay. So that's just to give you an idea of like what's happening and what we're going to be building later. And just to give you an idea of like what can be built, I'm not sure if anyone's seen Web Dev Challenge on YouTube, but there's an episode on code-powered phone hotline where teams got together in teams of 4, and they did like a 4-hour hackathon, and they were able to use Conversation Relay to build up that phone hotline like pretty quickly. And they built really cool things, like for example, there was like a Pokemon, if anyone's a Pokemon fan here, a Pokemon index lookup where you can ask things about your Pokemon. There was one about, I think, Google Maps, like a restaurant finder, and things like that. On the other side, I've got Rashad, my colleague, who built something using Gemini with Conversation Relay. So Conversation Relay is LLM agnostic. You can use any large language model provider. In our demo today, we're going to be using OpenAI, but of course you can use Anthropic, Gemini, any large language model provider there is.
Today, we're going to...
We're not going to watch the video now, we don't have time for that. But enough talk, let's jump into the actual building now. So for today's ingredients, continuing our food theme here, there are 3 ingredients for today. The first is having a Twilio account. So a Twilio account is where you're going to manage your phone numbers. Then we need a large language model API key and ngrok to expose our local server to the local network. A local server to the network so that Twilio can find it. And what we'll build together today is an Al Cafe booking system, continuing the food theme. So the first thing we'll do is find a phone number together. So I am now going to switch to my Twilio dashboard. So this is a Twilio dashboard. How many people here have used Twilio before? Okay, a few, so cool. So this will be very familiar. This is for those of you who haven't used Twilio before. So on the left-hand side, we've got phone numbers. You can go ahead and buy a new phone number. And then for the country code, we're going to search for a UK phone number by saying +44, and we're going to make sure that the voice capability is enabled. And then we're also going to search for specifically a mobile number. Once we're there, we've got like basically a list of phone numbers we can choose from. I usually like choosing a phone number with repeating numbers, maybe this one, and then you just make sure that the icon for the voice is present in the voice column. And then you can just buy that phone number. I'm gonna hit next. You can choose between this business or individual. So in our case, our cafe is a business, so I'm gonna choose a business number. And then we're gonna assign a regulatory bundle. So this is for compliance reasons. If you do not have one, you can just go ahead and create a new regulatory bundle. And then it's basically just a form that you gotta fill out. And every country is different, it depends. For the UK, I think you just submit an address and you'll be fine. And then it will go through an approval process that varies depending on country to country. So once that is ready, then you can buy that phone number. I'm going to skip buying the phone number because I already have one. And I'm just gonna go to the active phone numbers I have in my dashboard. So once you buy that phone number, the phone will appear in this view. And then if you click into one of them, you can start configuring it. So there are two things we can configure for a phone number. The first one is a messaging configuration, and the other one is a voice configuration. We're going to skip the messaging for this demo, but we're just going to focus on the voice configuration. And how we're going to configure this phone number is through a webhook. So I've got my ngrok domain over here, and I'm giving it the endpoint TWIML. So TWIML stands for Twilio Markup Language. And if we go to the docs quickly, make that a little bigger. There are different TWIML verbs that we can use when we're basically building out how you want the Twilio to handle the phone call. So you can do things like read out a string, you can play some audio, you can gather the caller, whatever they type on the phone keypad. You can also hang up, leave, pause, redirect the phone, or do whatever programmatically you want to do with it. So if I now head over into my IDE, go to main, great, okay. So what we've done already is we've set up our Twilio account. We've bought a phone number, we've configured, we've created regulatory bundle and configured the phone number. The next thing we want to do is start implementing conversation relay. Just a quick check. How many people know what conversation relay is already? Cool, like 1 per 2 people. Okay, so that's good. So this will be a very good way to get introduced to conversation relay. So on the right-hand side, I have a Python script, and make that bigger. I'm using Python, but you can use any programming language you want. And we're importing 3 libraries here. The first one is Fast API to build our web server. The next one is Twilio's programmable voice. So this is how we're going to import conversation relay to our application. And then OpenAI's library to handle the large language model side of things. And we've just got some configurations up here, and we're going to keep a sessions object to store our conversation in. So I mentioned earlier we've got our, I'm gonna clear that for now. So we've got our terminal endpoint over here. And then what we want to start doing is we're going to create a new voice response. Then we're going to connect to it. And thank you, Copilot, but the next one is wrong. So I'm going to say conversation. Typing with one hand is hard. Relay, and then we're going to start setting the different parameters in here. Cool. So the first parameter that we can set in conversation relay is the language. So it's also on the left-hand side over here. And I've got it in a environment variable. So you can set it to things like English US, English Great Britain, French, whatever language that you want conversation relay to work in. The next one, the next parameter that we're going to set is the WebSocket URL. So that WebSocket URL is actually going to be down here. So we're going to accept a WebSocket connection. We're going to process different message types. So there's one for setup, one for prompting, and one for interruption. And the one that actually we're going to double click into is the one for the prompt over here, because I have an LLM handler. And this LLM handler is basically going to use the OpenAI Responses API. So whenever the conversation streams those texts into our application, we'll call this LLM to process it. So in this case, we're also using the GPT-5 Mini for our application. So we've got the conversation in. We've also got the tool calling enabled over here. So for our tool calling in the demo, what I also have is our SMS handler. So the SMS handler is also going to be using the Twilio library to be able to send the text message, as I showed in the demo earlier. Now, heading back into talking about conversation relay back here. So that is our WebSocket URL configured. Then we're going to talk about the transcription provider. So we're going to set the transcription provider. And then we can basically choose any transcription provider that you want to use. Could be Amazon, Google. We're going to be using DeepGram. And then we're also going to specify this, the specific model from DeepGram that we want to be using for the speech-to-text. And we're going to choose Nova 2 General, because that's a good model in this case. Typing with one hand is much harder than I expected it to be. And then we're also going to configure the text-to-speech model next. So we've got different text-to-speech model providers. There's Amazon, there's Google, but we're going to choose 11 Labs because they have really cool voices. And then for selecting which voice we want to use from 11 Labs, we can head back to the Twilio docs. And basically in the docs, there's a section about picking different voices for your application. So we've got Google, we've got Amazon Poly Voices. If you scroll down on the side, I find this very useful. We've got the 11 Lab voices, and what you can do as well is play the different sounds. So let's try one.
I think this is a really nice way to just talk naturally together, you know?
A laugh can chase away the shadows of a long day.
I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high on a veil.
You know, I was thinking, would you like to go?
Cool, so this is a really nice way we can quickly find a voice that we like. And what I'm going to do is, I like Mark's natural voice, and I'm going to copy that voice ID and paste it back into my application. So we can set it like that. And then the final thing we're going to configure in Conversation Relay is the welcome greeting. Cool. I'm going to say, so this is what Conversation will say when you first make that phone call. Sheena from El Cafe. How can I help with your reservation today? Cool, that is good enough for me. Cool, so that is everything you need to configure for a Conversation Relay. And there is a... Am I missing something? Sorry, just double checking because there's a... Can anybody see what I'm missing in my... Oh no, we're all good. Okay, that was just Copilot glitching out. Cool, so that's everything you needed to basically implement Conversation Relay and configure all the parameters. And that's it, that's all we need to do. So next, we've customized the voice, we've chosen a voice from 11 Labs. And the other thing we also need to do is the prompting for the agent. So when it comes to prompting, so I've got my file over here. We want to set like a personality and who the agent is going to be. So in our case, we're going to specify like the company background. So in this case, the company name is going to be El Cafe. Industry is restaurant and hospitality. The use case is reservation management. And then we're also going to set the persona and tone. So I've set like, you know, the persona to be warm and welcoming, you know, helpful, some tone guidelines, traits, communication style. We can also set things like the example interactions we want this agent to have. I skipped that one and I went straight into instructions. So this covers the use case I want this agent to be handling, including things like reservation handling, you know, inquiries, the communication style, and then also for the edge cases when information is not available, and also for closing the call. The next part is more interesting because now we're talking about function calling. So my agent is able to send text messages using the send SMS function, using the SMS handler I showed you earlier. And then below, I'm also giving it the example usage, so whenever this occurs, the agent knows what to do with that. And finally, the most important thing in my prompt is the text normalization for voice. And this is very important because when you're having that conversation with your AI agent, you want to make sure that you're reading things like numbers, dates, emails, special characters, in a more natural way. So for example, when it comes to pricing, you don't want your agent to say $20, you want it to say $20. So having this in the prompt will really help with to help make the conversation sound more natural. So now we have everything. We've implemented Conversation Relay. We're going to call our agent one more time and hopefully it works. So I am going to kill that. Main. And we're going to give our agent another call. So let's try.
Hi, I'm Anni from Al Cafe. How can I help you with your reservation today?
Hey, what's on the menu today?
We offer a seasonal contemporary American menu. Think shareable small
Can you send me the text? Send me a text of the menu. So whenever the tool calling happens, it does take a little bit more time. And then hopefully we got that text message. Sorry, I forgot to have QuickTime on the side. Okay. Cool. So that was a little conversation relay setup, and you saw how easy, or hopefully how easy that was to do. And then the final thing I want to talk about is something called SSML tags. So SSML tag stands for Speech Synthesis Markup Language. If I quickly switch to the docs to talk about what that is. Basically, it is these tags that you can add to the to help your agents like specifically do these kinds of things. So for example, you can emphasize words, you can add the correct pronunciation of words. So this is very important if you want to pronounce a person's name right or a company name right. You can also control things like the volume, the speaking rate, the pitch of how things sound, and this can all help create a more natural sounding agent. So this is very useful. And one of the things that I did at the beginning of this demo is actually, I'm not sure if you noticed, if anyone's Irish here or not Irish. The reason why I say that is because the name Sheena, this name over here, is actually pronounced wrong by 11 Labs. And the correct pronunciation, so 11 Labs says Cine, but the correct pronunciation is actually Sheena. And the way we can fix that is by adding the phoneme tag over here. So if we add this to the string in the conversation relay welcome greeting, then it will pronounce, the agent is going to be able to pronounce the name correctly. So I'm not actually going to show that, but just trust me, it works. And then that is everything for our demo. So I'm going to switch back to my slides next. Cool. So we were able to implement conversation relay hopefully quite easily. Otherwise, you guys should check out the YouTube. It's very, very helpful. We bought a Twilio phone number, we implemented conversation relay, and we also helped make our agents sound more human by using 11 lab voices, but also configuring the prompt and playing around with SSML tags. So that was pretty cool. So we talked about fine-tuning with SSML tags over here. And so what's next? So I've got some resources here. If you want to get started with building conversation relay, I'll leave this for a minute so you can take a photo. We've got links to the docs, best practices. There's also webinars inside one of these links, which has a demo of conversation relay, but also something else called conversation intelligence, which I'll talk about in our dessert section. So I'll give everyone a moment to take a photo. And then, amazing. Cool, everyone got it? Nice. And I'm going to talk about Twilio's event. So I'm not sure if anyone's going to San Francisco anytime soon, but if you do plan to, our flagship event is happening on May 6th to 7th. If you're interested, you can come talk to me. I have a special registration link for you if you are planning to go to San Francisco. But if you're not, don't worry, we have a bunch of other events happening across the entire world, basically. Anybody want to take a photo? Otherwise, we can move on. Cool. The second thing I want to share is we have a Twilio Discord. So if you're building anything cool, or if you have any questions when you're building with Twilio, do come join our Discord. We've got a very friendly community. They do like regular Tuesday coding sessions, I suppose, that you can get into if that's what you're interested in. So do join our Discord community. And then finally for our dessert, we almost made it. I thought it'd be pretty fun to have an interactive demo that everyone can join in. So what we're gonna do next is I am going to switch my screen. to my script again, and then I'm gonna kill this script. Oops, kill the script. UV on this one. Just make sure everything's there, and great. So what I have for you next is a fun little activity where everybody can call into this number, and you get to talk to an AI agent on the other side. It's going to ask you one question. You just have a quick conversation, and then you can end the call. And has anyone seen Inside Out? Everyone knows the movie from Pixar, yeah? So what I have on the left-hand side is like a jar of like different sentiment, different emotions of like how the Twilio's conversation intelligence is going to analyze your conversation, and then it's going to drop a drop-in sentiment bowl into the squash jar. So have fun. It's not going to be used for anything. I'm not going to send you any marketing things after this, I promise. So yeah. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to try it out, and I'll also do the same. Hey, we got one. Cool, so I think the network is not that great in here. Okay, we got something going. Yay! Okay, that is the highlight of my presentation. Yeah, so going back to my slide. Thank you, everyone.